Hello and welcome to episode 157 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Joining me on today's episode are the film directors behind the amazing film Shorta. I can safely say it's one of the best films that I've seen come from Denmark, and it's the directorial debut from Anders Ølholm and Frederik Hviid. Both of them have an incredible future ahead of them, and I can't wait for you to listen to the interview today, because this film is getting some of the best reviews out there, and as we sit here right now, it's out in the UK in cinemas and on digital release. I urge you to go and check it out, and I promise you won't regret it. As always, in true typical Mark and Me fashion, I do like to touch base and talk about my last episode. Only a couple of days ago, I was joined by the film director Jenna Bass. We got to sit down and talk all about her fantasy film and the incredible western Flatland. It's been an amazing interview and I've had such a great response. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join me and listen to that interview. I've seen people that have now gone out and checked the film and told me that they've absolutely loved it. And as always, that's the best compliment that I can get on the Mark and Me podcast. But let's get back to today's episode. I'm so excited because Shorta is a film that needs to be seen, and it's so good to hear from the directors themselves. So here's me and Anders and Frederik talking all things Shorta. So Frederik and Anders, thanks for taking the time to join me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
Thank you for inviting us.
What I want to do today for the listeners that are going to be tuning in maybe for the first time to discover your work, Frederik, what was it that made you fall in love with film? Was it at a very young age you were watching films with the family, or how did it come about?
I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know where it actually started, but I know that it started at a very early age. I think some of my earliest memories are from when I was like 5 years old, when I started really getting into buying VHS tapes and reading about films and listening to soundtracks and studying movie posters and stuff like that. And I mean, it started very early, I think I saw 2 films a day all the way up until I moved out of the house, basically with my almost a collection of 1,000 VHSs, which my parents were very relieved to get out of the way. and I think from there on out, I've always been very interested in telling stories. I've always been very interested in other people and in different environments that than I perhaps am a part of, right? And I think the adventurous part in me, the part that wants to that wants to see what it's like being a cop for a day, or what it would be to be a firefighter for a day, or I don't know. I think that's that's what I think initially turned me on into film. I mean, because I have a natural curiosity to other people, I think.
And what about for you, Anders? Was it quite similar, or was it a lot later in life?
No, it's very similar. All the way down to the 1,000 VHS tapes. I had them in storage until about I think 5 or 6 years ago, and then had them thrown out, and which I regret. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was also very early on. My interest started through martial arts. Yeah. I did martial arts from a very early age, and was very obsessed with Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and Shaw Brothers and Jean-Claude Van Damme, and would watch it, exclusively watch, anything that had, kicks or, fist flying. That was all I wanted to watch for a long period. And I think after my parents divorced, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. I grew up in kind of a sketchy neighborhood, and they didn't really want me to sort of get into bad company. And so I would spend a lot of time with them, and they would sort of indulge my sort of propensity for watching these films. And my grandfather, you know, I was probably like 6 or 7 years old when I started this, and he would sort of translate all those, all these, kung fu films. You know, it was always about, someone who, you know, offended someone's family, and young men and old men makeup and all this stuff. And at a certain point, I think they got sort of fed up with it, and they started, pitching other kinds of films. I remember vividly them trying to get me to watch Hviid, and I was like, but it does, do they do any kind of kung fu and they were like, no, but they have a lot of gun fights and stuff. And I was like, nah, I'm good. But eventually they kind of, got me to watch different kinds of films. And also it's also very much been a way of bonding with my father. My dad was fairly young when he had me, and he would show me all those films that my mom didn't want me to see, and that scared the shit out of me, like Aliens and A Nightmare on Elm Street and all those kinds of films. So yeah, it was, from a very early age, and it's been pretty much all I've wanted to do ever since.
And Frederik, did you remember that point in your career, or what age was it that you thought to yourself, this is a reality, this can become something that I can do and not just a dream? Because I'm sitting there watching RoboCop as a kid and stuff like that, thinking I'd love to make a film like this, I'd love to direct or even be an actor, but there's a point where that it's either a dream or a reality. And at what point did it come for you that you thought, I can do this, I can make this my living?
I don't think that. I think I was not sure that I could make a living out of it until we actually started making Shorta. To be honest, but it became apparent to me, very clear to me, that it was the only thing I wanted to do when my father forced me to find an alternative career, because I think initially he had his doubts that it would actually be possible to live off making films, right? He knew that I was obsessed with film, and it was the only thing I would talk about, and it was the only thing I would ever want for Christmas. And it was just VHS tapes up to both ears, right? And he at some point he would say, he would sit me down on the table, and he was like, okay, well, I know you want to make films, and that's fine, you can do that, but I need you to think of an alternative way of life, because it might become more difficult than you actually think it is to make films. And so I started to research into what could an alternative thing for me be, and there was just nothing. To be honest, there was nothing that interested me. There was maybe I could have, I looked at perhaps becoming a firefighter, but I think that was more because of the aesthetics.
Yeah,
that was because I wanted to film it, I think.
Yeah.
Or I like the environment. I could easily see myself carrying somebody out of a fire. I think that was the frame that I would like, right? Not actually being a firefighter. And I think he realized that when I wanted to go to this this very popular it's called, it's a boarding school maybe, and it's quite expensive. It's called the European Film College, which is in Jutland, in Denmark. And it's quite expensive. It's I don't know, £12,000 or something, quite a lot.
Yeah.
To go there for 8 months. And I worked 3 jobs for a year, and I lived by myself at that time. Worked 3 jobs, and I managed to save up those money.
Yeah.
And I think from that point on, he actually respected the drive that I had for making it in the business, and had supported me ever since. That was a long-winded answer, but I think that
no, it's good. It shows that you're committed. It shows that you kind of were only really wanting one career. I mean, some parents would be like, you need to get a law degree or, you know, become an accountant or do something else to fall back on. But it seems that you were only ever going to be doing that one job. You know, anything else would have bored you, or you were only just looking at them as being, you know, you're talking about being a firefighter, but basically you wanted to remake the film Backdraft.
Yes. yes. I mean, he tried to, but it didn't really stick. And yes, I think it was because, I mean, I wanted to make Backdraft again.
That's what we need in this world.
Yeah.
And for you, Anders, was it quite similar, or were you kind of, can you remember that point where you thought, I need to write, I need to be involved in films, I don't just want to watch them, I want to make them, I want to fall in love with them in a different level?
Well, I think sort of a crucial moment for me was, and Frederik and I have talked about this endlessly, but I think, from the moment I understood that there was someone who actually made, films, who wrote them and directed them, and it wasn't just the actors sort of, coming up with it on the spot. I knew that was something that I wanted to pursue. And it's kind of, everyone in my family, I come from kind of a working class family. There's not a lot, there hasn't really been a lot of expectations in terms of getting an education or pursuing any kind of career. So they want me to be happy, of course, but no one really ever sat me down and said, you have to have a plan B. But of course, I didn't have any connections. I didn't really know how to get into the film business. And, I eventually got into the Danish Film School, which is very hard. And it's at that point, I'm not sure how it is now, but they only took in about, I think, 6 students every other year.
Wow.
And so I knew from that point on, I kind of knew that, if I applied myself and really worked hard, which I had up until that point, that I had a good shot in making it. But I think, just understanding, and another thing, that was what we'd actually talked about a lot, is I think when I saw, Pusher, that was very crucial for me, because up until that point, Denmark had really mostly done sort of kitchen sink dramas or sort of very folky, slapstick kind of comedies. And we weren't known for making genre films, or, having, we didn't really have a wide berth or wide sort of diversity of films, and certainly not genre films. So I think seeing that was very sort of, that really made it be sort of a viable way to go in terms of, not having to sort of go to Hollywood, which seemed very abstract and difficult. And so seeing that film, that just blew me away. And Frederik, I know it's the exact same. So I think it was kind of different things, but I think getting into film school, and then, when I actually got into film school, I saw the relief in my mom's face. So I think they were probably more worried than they ever let on, but
And obviously we've both just mentioned on this interview so far, Shorta. Now this film is mind-blowing. It's one of those films that when I watched it, I was sucked in straight away. So as soon as I put it on, sometimes a film takes a while to like get you, and it's a slow burner, but from the moment this film starts, it's so intense, you're just sucked in. Now, how did the idea come about? Can you remember, was it one of you that sat down and had this idea and wanted to kind of work together? I mean, you probably get this question a lot, but how did you two kind of get to work on this together, and it start from just an idea on a piece of paper to actually being greenlit and made?
The initial idea is I had about, I don't know, probably around 10 years ago, and something that I had bandied about for a while. And at some point, I worked on it as a writer with another director at the helm. And Frederik and I, we've been friends for a long while, and we wanted to do something together. And we sort of pitched each other different ideas. And then at one point, I just mentioned this film, this project I was working on, this idea, and Frederik's eyes just lit up, and we started talking, and we had very similar notions about how we saw the film and what it could be, and sort of very specific ideas. Some of them came to pass, some of them didn't. But then I went back to Toolbox Film, who produced the film, and said, "This is probably going to sound crazy, but I actually want to direct this film myself alongside Frederik." And they were like, "No, that's actually a great idea." So to their credit, here we are 6 years later. But the initial idea was very much a sort of a high concept idea, and something in the vein of like The Warriors or Assault on Precinct 13. And then once we started researching the film and really sort of getting a deeper understanding of those environments and those sort of milieus, then that's when the actual themes and the substance, if you will, that's when that sort of revealed itself.
And Frederik, when you first was kind of told about this film and asked to join up on and direct it, did you feel quite ambitious, or was it quite daunting? Because it's quite a suspense thriller, isn't it? You've got these scenes, it's got quite a lot going on. The story, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, I don't want to give too much away, so I don't like podcasts they tell you exactly what happens. This film, you could never predict what's going to happen, but can you remember sitting there and thinking to yourself, oh my god, this is quite a lot to kind of bite off? Or were you kind of just sitting there thinking, let's just do this now, this is everything I've wanted?
I think I would be lying if I said that I just were like, okay, let's go to work. I think there I can think of many evenings and many nights and many days where I called Anders anxious about the challenges that lie ahead, and I think making a film is a difficult thing, and I think every time you manage to make a film that works, I think it's a small miracle in a way that it actually that it panned out as you wanted it to, and and that being two at the wheel, as Anders and I were a tremendous help, I think, for the both of us, because we spent a lot of time talking about the film. We spent a lot of time, taking every character moment, every bit of stage direction, every bit of dialogue, and actually talking about what's it about, really. So. And how we're going to shoot it, where we're going to place our characters, how are we going to do it on the day, right? And I think that preparation and being true to actually execute it, and to talk about the challenges that bubble to the surface, which they will on a shoot, because it is an organic process, right? Stuff will happen that you couldn't foresee, and I think being true to be able to take care of those unforeseen obstacles, I think is a very, very helpful thing for first time directors, creatively and also practically. I think it's nice to have somebody to share your successes and to share your defeats, and to say, hey, that idea is not bad, and also to say, hey, that idea is pretty shitty, and let's not do that, let's do something different. And I think that's a good way of figuring out what you want to do by challenging yourself, and also the one that you do the film with, because it is a very, very close working relationship that you have to, you know, respect for a long while.
I think respect's the word, isn't it? I've had people on before where we've had, 2 or 3 directors that have worked on a film at the same time. So, for example, Turbo Kid had 3 directors.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and these guys, I was asking them how they found it, because, at times you must want to kill each other, but at times you want to hug each other, because it's so much emotion, it's so much passion, it's such a crucial thing to get right. So, Anders, did you find it quite difficult to kind of let go of some ideas or decisions, or were you just always on the same page, or were you able to switch off at the end of the day and not take anything too personal?
Well, it was actually, while we were shooting, it was actually not that difficult, because we, as Frederik said, we were very prepared in terms of what we wanted to achieve. We had analyzed each scene, sort of broken it down, and both in terms of the sort of underlying themes and really, but also sort of visually. And so we really knew what we wanted what was important in each scene, and what we wanted to achieve. And also there's just this, there's sort of a, time is a constant issue. So you just have to move forward all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's much more sort of challenging, I think, once you have, theoretically have all the time in the world, like when you're editing a film, or doing the mixing a film, and I think that's where we had to sort of, that's where we had a lot of not a lot, but we had some conversations in terms of the sort of little details, and where we sort of differed, but we wanted to make the same film. We worked on this film for a long time, and we had the same tastes. We were also sort of, I think, complement each other in terms of having that other person that can challenge your ideas or take them to the next level, or come up with something entirely different. Is if it works, it can really sort of up the material and really, the whole process. But I think we were very much in sync in terms of what we wanted to do. And like Frederik said, it's, when it can be a very sort of, I think, lonely job to be a director, because everything falls on you. And in terms of, having that other guy, where, at the end of the day, where, if something didn't go right, or someone's being an asshole, or, whatever it is, you can kind of, you have that other person that's equally invested, and for whom it matters just as much. And that's very, very, very valuable. And it's been a great experience.
And Frederik, this is something I ask everybody, even if they're a producer, a director, a writer, a musician, it doesn't matter at what stage they are at their career, but people listening to this podcast are interested in film, making film, and some will be at film school. Some people will listen to this today and then want to make a film. What advice do you give to somebody that's out there listening who wants to become a director or get involved in making a film? Because it's so hard, isn't it, to be seen and to be heard and get your work seen out there when there's such a huge amount of films being made as we speak. How do you feel that it's best to get your work seen and noticed?
I think that there actually are quite a lot of outlets from where you can show your stuff now that wasn't available when I started out, which I think are very useful. I mean, I think it's for the younger generation to sound very old, but because I don't really know how to use them, I think my best advice would be to just make. I mean, it sounds obvious, but just to make them. I mean, make. I mean, and perhaps not focus that much on on making the perfect film, a home run in the first go. Because I think actually, I mean, what helped me a lot personally was to make a lot of shitty short films.
Yeah.
To be honest, in the beginning, to make a lot of films that I thought was what I wanted to say, what I thought was, me being clever or me being interesting, and and realizing when when I showed them around that they weren't that interesting and they weren't that clever, and it just helped me figuring out what I wanted to say, and then really taught me to make the types of films that I really want to see myself, that I want to press play on. And I think that was a huge part of, I think, my drive as well now as well, is to go go for that gut feeling, go for those films that that I know personally interest me, and not perhaps care as much about what everybody else might think, but to do those types of films that I think are cool and that I want to watch, and then learn from them, your mistakes. I think the more mistakes you can make early on in your career, the better, because the lesser people will see them. So for those starting out, I would say go out and just make a lot of mistakes, and then wise up.
And Anders, have you been reading the feedback so far? I mean, have you been reading the reviews, or do you try and avoid it? Because I've been on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, and there's some absolutely amazing, really positive reviews for this film. Best Danish film in years, mind blown, incredible, 10 out of 10. Or do you try and ignore it? Because if you read that one bad comment, it kind of hits you hard.
We talked about this a lot before the film came out, and I declared that I wouldn't read anything, and I've read everything. And I still read everything. And actually just the other day I saw someone on Letterboxd who Frederik and I both know, who shit on the film, and I was very close to sending it to Frederik. That was late at night, and but yeah, I mean, I think I'm very proud of the film. I know and I think Frederik is as well. And I think it's gotten a very it's got a great reception. I mean, we couldn't really have asked for anything better. So I think I can really it's not too difficult to sort of distinguish between the good ones and the bad ones, and take it in stride. And then when my favorite thing is the comments, and Frederik hated those. I think especially in the beginning, and the sort of the 40-year-old 40-year-old virgins living in their mom's basement.
Yeah.
Who that stuff cracks me up. I love it. We also had a few test screenings where which went very well, but we had a few people who just really took us to task in a way that was just very entertaining. And I actually regret not framing some of them, because they were just like just completely hilarious. But I think what I try to keep in mind is, I've written other films where I haven't read any of the reviews, and I've had films made where I did, and you can usually just that one bad review is what sticks out in your mind. And I try to remember that a lot of my favorite films weren't necessarily well received when they came out, and it's very subjective and all that stuff. So the short answer is I do read everything. I don't know if I'll do it.
It's impossible
next time. It's very hard. It's very hard, and but I felt good about the film, and I was proud of the film, and so I felt ready.
That's good. And what I do on this podcast to make it quite original is usually it's one guest, so you might end up fighting today on the podcast, but I ask the guest to choose the outro song. So the outro song to the podcast is chosen by the guest. It can be any band, any piece of music. let's take one from you each, and I might like toss a coin when I'm editing or something. But anyone that comes on, actor, musician, producer, director, cinematographer, whatever it is, they get to choose a song they love. But you're not allowed to have any longer than the last bit of this podcast to think about it. Otherwise, you'll be there for days making lists, thinking what you want.
Oh, that's hard. I'm blanking.
You're good with music, Anders. You're the music guy.
Yeah, I know. But I feel like
it's hard, isn't it, to whittle it down to one?
What do you think, Frederick?
I mean, this might be the boring answer, but we had like this very, very cool. We had this very cool track on a temp thing that we used for Shorta at one point by Jet Palmer. I can't remember what it was called, but that was a really cool song. Jet Palmer from Upgrade.
Oh yeah, that's right. The end credit track. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Let's do that. That's got a theme for the film.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
That's I just listened to that score. It's an amazing score.
Our time's up, guys. So I want to say a massive thank you for coming on the podcast today. I can't wait for people to discover this film. Genuinely, I mean this. It's brilliant. You should be so proud. And I know that you guys have got an incredible career ahead of you. So thank you.
Thank you. Wow, that's nice of you.
So there it is. There's my interview with me, Frederik, and Anders. It was such a great time to sit down with them both and talk all about Shorta. Once you've seen this film, I honestly believe you will not believe it's their actual debut film as directors. It's astonishing, the budget is great, and they've done wonders with what they're given. It's such a great film from start to finish, and it will blow your mind. You know by now I will never spoil films. I won't go into the plot or give any spoilers away. But when you've seen this film, please jump on markandme.com. I want you to feedback and let me know on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram that you've seen it, and let me know your thoughts. It's the best compliment that I can ever get if I recommend a film, a book, maybe an album, and then you guys at home go and check it out and love it. It's the ultimate thing, so please let me know. If you're new to Mark and Me, jump onto markandme.com, because on there's links to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of the social media channels, and I reply and read every single message that I'm sent. If you want to support me, please share the episode. I say it on every episode because it's crucial to the Mark and Me. If you sit there and share it on your Facebook, your Twitter or your Instagram, you're going to get new people listening to Mark and Me. And if you really love today's episode, I do have a Patreon page. The podcast really needs support via Patreon. You can go on there and the link is on markandme.com. Every single month I give prizes away from Vice Press, Last Exit to Nowhere t-shirts and many more as a thank you for supporting me. All the money that comes in goes right back into the podcast and allows me to record more and more interviews, which basically means that you guys at home are going to get even more episodes, so it's a win-win for everyone. Thanks again to everyone who listens to the podcast, and I can't stress enough, September is going to be manic. I'm going to be releasing 3 episodes per week at the moment because so much is coming in, and I'm absolutely loving every single minute of it, and I truly believe that my best ever work is coming out this month, so it's a great time to be excited, and I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that listens because it means the absolute world. I'll be back in only a few days' time with another brand new episode. Like I said, it's not slowing down anytime soon. So until that moment, look after yourself, take care, and I'll speak to you all soon.